Hello there. This is Being God's Obedient Servant channel. And as you can tell from the title, today's lesson, we're in Esther, finishing up that book, going to do 8 through 10. If you're new to this and just clicked on this as a Bible study channel, I go through the Bible verse by book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. And so I like to explain the Bible, what it means, especially for us today, which parts pertain to us today and which parts don't. God's commandment to us is if we teach the Bible, we're to teach all of it, not just part of it. And also that's an indication to us that that's how we are to learn the Bible. We're to learn all of it, not just part of it. So, I'm going to go ahead and jump right on in here and go ahead and get started. So remember we left off last time that Haman, the one that was trying to destroy the Jews in their land, in the area of their land, that his plan was found out by Queen Esther. She divulged it to the king, and the king had him killed for it. And so, once again, if you're new to this and clicked on it, Esther is a Hebrew woman that was now became the queen of the land of King Ahasuerus. And she's been hiding the fact that she's a Jew this whole time. She never told the fact, that she was a Jew. Mordecai was her kind of adopted father, but technically a cousin. And so he's raised her as his own and everything. And he's been helping her this whole time, and even helped the kingdom by helping save the king. So he was rewarded for that. But even then, this Haman character was trying to kill all the Jews because Satan likes to raise people to hate godly people, or God's chosen people, or Christians also. We fall in that category. It's like here in America today, it's finally starting to happen where you got a bunch of people hating the Jews and hating Christians. And I even heard it on a podcast recently where a guy was talking about, we need to quit worrying about the Jews and stuff, and we just need to worry about America, and America's religion is Christianity. And I just kind of want to slap some of these people around a little bit because they don't understand. It's like, why do Christians support Israel? It's because Israel's God and Christians' God are the same God. Jesus is a Jew. Was a Jew. Born of the Jews. And when he was born again, he had a new body, so he was not born of the Jews again then. But at first, when he walked this earth, he was an Israelite. A descendant from Judah, which is King David. But, the Jews they rejected Jesus, so Jesus went to the Gentiles and he said, this is the rock on which I will build my church, was the Gentiles instead of the Jews. So if you didn't know that, now you do. And that's the reason for it. So if you're a Christian in America, you have to support the Jews. You can't go against them. I don't necessarily say you have to support them. Because if they are doing wrong, then they're doing wrong. God will deal with them. But you yourself can't go against them. Which is what this Haman character was trying to do. He was going against the Jews. And it's another story on why you don't want to do that, because God will bring destruction to your land. and to those who hate his people. And that's how we're finishing this up. So the Jews have been saved. Well, the plan for Haman has been stopped, sort of. The plan is still in action as of right now. Well, of course, in the story. And, well, it gets explained more. So, in the story here, I said, like Haman, the one that came up with the plan to kill all the Jews, he didn't know that Queen Esther was a Jew, and that his plan to kill the Jews would also mean killing the queen, which is treason. But yeah. And all of this came across because Mordecai wouldn't bow to him. And it never really says why, but for a Jew to not bow to someone or something is because they're wanting to be worshipped, and a Jewish person cannot worship a false god. That's more than likely why. I don't know for certain. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump. That's why Haman started hating the Jews, was because of Mordecai not bowing to him. Yeah, talking about the entitlement there. But yeah, Haman at the time, though, he was second in command to the king, appointed by the king. And of course, he's like, well, everybody should worship. I don't know. I don't know what type of worshiping he wanted to be done, but, you don't worship kings. You can bow and pay homage to kings, but you don't worship them. Anyways, let's go ahead and finish this book, Book of Esther. Chapter 8, verse 1. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. So, of course, yeah, also at this point, the king didn't know that his new queen is a Jewish woman, but also that Mordecai is her adoptive father. And so this is why she, normally has sought counsel with Mordecai, but in the past, though. Anyways, verse 2. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So here we have the lesson here that, even though Esther's a woman, God uses women just as much as he does men to get, things done. And Esther, in this point, her primary role for this was to become queen. That way, she could help, save the Jews in the land, but do it through Mordecai. Because Mordecai becomes, it's weird. It's in this book that in the end, Mordecai has been giving more praises than Esther, even though the book is called Esther. But, we learn of all these things, different books. You got, the book of Ruth. She wasn't even an Israelite, but she served her mother, which was married into mother. How originally God plans it is, like if, say you have a daughter and you give her hand in marriage to a man, she now belongs to that family she's married into more than the family she was born into. Because that's why the woman takes the man's last name. And, that's kind of like how Ruth was. She was, but, we already went through that book. And I think I explained all that there as well, but that's why God blessed her, because she honored that, because even though all the men died and the woman said that, you all can go back to your people or whatever, she's going to go back to her people, the Israelites. And Ruth, instead of abandoning her mother, she stayed with her mother and helped her. And so God blessed her for it. The same thing here. Esther did as Mordecai told her. And it led to them being able to save Mordecai and the rest of the Jews in this land. But yeah, let's continue on verse 3. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet. and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther, so Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of, here's another one of those good names. I got some more good ones in here too. Hamadatha. Let's go Hamadatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is, the month Sivan, on the 23 day thereof, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces. That's a lot of locations. To each one of these letters, there was no printing press back then, so each of these letters had to be handwritten and sent to these provinces individually. And also had to be in multiple languages because of the land, and anyways. And let's say, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people in province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. They're going to find out, how many people actually hated the Jews in all these areas. So it was just, Haman was the voice to speak to all the people full of hate. But we have to remember one of the main lessons from the story is you don't go against God's chosen people, because it may cost you more than you realize. Verse 12. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the post that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple, and the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day, and many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. And this is like I was talking about before, so they got a lot of people that, converted to Judaism but were not Israelites, because just because you're Jewish does not mean that you're an Israelite. It doesn't mean you're from the 12 tribes. But it did come from based upon, the Israelites. But let's continue on. Chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, that is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them. The Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought their hurt. And no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And all the rulers of the provinces, and the lieutenants, and the deputies and officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces, for this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter, and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. And here's some of those names I was talking about. Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Aspatha, and Poratha, and Adalia, and Eridatha, and Parmashta, and Arijah, and Eridiah, and Vajezatha. Let's go with that. Yeah, let's go with that name. Vajezatha. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hand. So here's that thing about I was talking about, whatever you do, God may bring back upon you more than you realize. Because not only did Haman lose his life, because of his actions, he had 10 sons that also lost their lives. Like before, throughout all of the Bible, it says, the son will not be held accountable for the sins of the father, but the sins of the father can affect the sons, can affect your children. So your sins can affect your children, even though you will answer for your sin. There's consequences to everything. So, continue on, verse 11. On that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee, or what is thy request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree. and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. So Esther, she's a little, little feisty one there as well when it comes to seeking vengeance, I guess. Now, of course, we're not to live this way no more. In the Old Testament, it was this way, to destroy those that hated them. But now, Jesus' commandment is to love thy neighbor, even thy enemies. And if we have to defend ourselves is one thing, but we're not to hunt them. We're to help show them Jesus' mercy through love. That's what we're commanded to do today. So that's the big difference between Old Testament and New Testament times. But you are allowed to defend yourself and your family and stuff. In fact, you're even ordered to do so. But you're not to seek vengeance. But, okay, verse 14. And the king commanded it so to be done, and a decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan, but on the prey they laid not their hand. And of course, that's the spoil, like the people's property. They didn't take their property, this, that, and the other. They just went after the people that was seeking them harm. Verse 16. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 75,000. But they laid not their hands on the prey. On the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. And Mordecai wrote these things, and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar, and the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained, and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to their appointed time every year. and that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew, wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matters of the fastings and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. Chapter 10. Chapter 10. Well, this is only a section of chapter 10. It's a very short chapter, 3 verses. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai, whereunto the king advanced him. Are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. And that's the end of the book of Esther. So this is the second person. First we had Joseph, who became second in command to Pharaoh of Egypt, which saved his people. And now Mordecai was made second in command after Esther was made queen, to do the same for the people in the provinces of, God's chosen people. And even those who, converted to Judaism. This has also helped support the Christians, is the reason why, God helps us as well. Because remember, God says, if you're one of His, all your needs will be met. But you have to remember there's a difference between needs and wants. Like even God promises to give you all your heart's desires. But that's only after your heart is as in tune with God. When your desires are as God's desires, then God will give you your heart's desires. A lot of people like to leave that part out about, God will give you all your heart's desires. And, I desire a Cadillac and a mansion. And, you got a lot of these TV evangelists that live that way. And so people send them money thinking that they're doing God's work, when in fact it's, it's there's a big difference between you being a cheerful giver of tithing and charity versus someone asking you for it. But that's a totally different story than this. But yeah, that's the end of the book of Esther. And it's not a long book. Got good lessons and stuff in it. It would be it'd be a good story and stuff to kind of share with the Hamas people. I know in the earlier part I called Haman Hamas. I was like, we got too many H stuff and everything else going on with people going against the Jews today, but yeah, it's not going to end well for the Hamas terrorist. But like the old saying goes, some people, you have to let them just mess around and find out all on their own, because they're not going to listen to anyone else, especially people full of hate. They don't want to hear nothing. And that's the one thing we got to pray about today, is like the hatred is spreading across America. Big time it's spreading. During COVID, they started hating Christians, and now they're hating the Jews. They're hating the Jews in America. They're hating the Jews in Israel. They're hating Jews everywhere, in other countries as well. And it is not going to be good for America if America starts turning against all Christians and Jews. It's not going to be good at all. We're already a prime candidate to be taken over with communism and socialism right now. We have a government that seems to be active in wanting to dismantle the Constitution and destroy its own people in the process, just trying to get, control. Doesn't make no sense. But when people are full of sin and hate, they never do seem to make sense. Because it's always just self-pleasing, never godliness. That's why we've got to pray for these people. We're not to wish death upon them. We're to wish that they get their hearts right with God, that God's able to break through. Save them if they want to be saved. At least what does the Bible say it when it starts? You got the hardening the heart, but not for some odd reason I can't remember the opposite of hardening. Softening. Yeah, we'll go. Duh. Softening their hearts so that He can speak to them. But yeah. Anyways, this also, you got to remember to pray for yourselves, pray for each other, pray for the lost, pray for the wicked, that they may be found. But also, part about praying for yourselves and your family and friends is that the wicked don't show up on their doorstep causing them harm. It's you don't want that to start happening. It already has started happening, but we don't. You don't want it to spread. But if you start, trying to meet these people with the same hate they have for you, then it's just going to fuel the flames even more. But once again, you have a right to defend yourself. It's even commanded by God and Jesus. Like Jesus says, if you have 2 coats, sell one and get a sword. He means for you to be able to protect yourself. But yeah. It does seem like, all the prophecies are being met for, the coming of the end times being at hand. So, if you are one of God's children, you've been blessed with the Holy Spirit, if the rapture happens, you get to go straight to heaven, straight to be with the Lord. Disappear in the blinking of an eye. You ain't gonna worry about this stuff no more. But if you're not, then you may have to endure the 7 years of what we've come to call our Armageddon. But yeah. So we also got to pray that the lost get found so that they don't suffer that. So, until next time, God bless, good night, and goodbye.